What's up, everybody? It's Dan from SageMathTutoring.com, and I am here with a video exploring a Calculus 2 concept. The concept would be inverse hyperbolic sine functions. Okay? So this is a classic case, this is a classic problem of things looking complicated but actually being easy. This is going to be a short video where we just cover this one problem. Because again, it's a classic case of things looking very complicated and ridiculous and terrible. And in reality, it's actually pretty easy to do so long as you have the reference material that you need, okay? In the higher echelons of math, the professor might sort of insist that you, memorize a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of relationships. There are ways of proving each relationship, but at a certain point, you will be expected to memorize a lot of things. And as it pertains to this problem right here, we have the inverse sine hyperbolic function of 1, and that equals ln of q, natural log of q, find q, either exact or 2 points after the decimal. Steps, they're kind enough to give you some steps. They say express the inverse hyperbolic sine function using a known formula as a logarithm. That is a hint right there. So even if you don't know what you're doing, for example, I actually didn't spend time covering this concept, but it doesn't take long to figure out what you need to do. You do a quick Google image search for hyperbolic inverse sine functions. It's going to be the image search or DuckDuckGo, if that's your preference. And you look at the images, and then one of the images that pops up is this. Okay, and there's no question that this is something that you might find in the appendix of a textbook, or it could be something in a worksheet that your professor hands out to everybody and says, memorize all this. Or if it's an open notebook test, maybe you could just look at it. Or if it's a note card test, these are the things that you would write down. Okay. Now, once again, there are ways of proving these relationships, but it's possible your professor doesn't care about whether or not you know how to prove these things. But the bottom line is, as it pertains to this problem, I think it's obvious to anyone that we would be looking at this, because this is the inverse hyperbolic sine function is equal to the natural log of something. Well, that's this structure, right? That is this structure right here. So we are just going to simply rely on the relationship right here. So the relationship says that, this is true, right? And since we're dealing with 1 as the x value, we would just put a 1 there, and we put a 1 there and a 1 there, right? So I'm going to sort of transfer this all the way here. We have sine inverse 1 equals natural log 1 plus 1 squared plus 1. And let's also acknowledge the fact that they said that this equals natural log of q, and our ultimate goal is to find q. So in my opinion, it would actually be helpful to write that fact as well, the fact that we are also acknowledging that all of this equals the natural log of q as well. All right, so there's 3 ways of representing the exact same value. You have this, and you have this, and they're all equal to each other. So at that point, I think it would be helpful to acknowledge that it's really this section here that is going to be useful for us, where we have the natural log of something equals the natural log of something. So clearly this quantity has to be equal to q, right? So that should make sense. Since that's the case, you can drop the natural log symbols and create a separate equation that says that 1 plus radical 1 squared plus 1 equals q itself. Once again, keeping in mind finding q is our goal, right? We're not looking for natural log of q. We're looking for just q itself, and therefore we're acknowledging that this is equal to q, setting up that equation. Obviously, this would be 1 plus square root of 2. And at that point, we are effectively done. However, you might want to use, the calculator to find out what that is. And even if you didn't have a calculator, you might be able to tell that of all the multiple choice answers, the only one that really could work is the first one. So let's circle that. So that is how you do that one. What's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is it benefits you to recognize that there is a strong possibility the problem is not nearly as hard as it seems. It also benefits you to ask yourself out the gate what is irrelevant information and what is relevant information. Now, with regards to irrelevant information, notice how we didn't really even need to know what the hell a hyperbolic function was here. We didn't even need to know what the graph of a hyperbolic function was. We didn't even need to know what an inverse sine function is, right? I mean, this is just a disaster, right? It's a hyperbolic inverse trig function. I mean, a lot of people get freaked out just by trig functions, let alone inverse trig functions, let alone hyperbolic inverse trig functions. They have graphs, they have proofs associated with them, etc. And none of that mattered. None of that mattered. So that was, all of that stuff is irrelevant to the problem. Then the next question is, well, what's relevant to the problem? What's relevant to the problem are, is the relationship between inverse hyperbolic sine and a natural log expression. Well, where is that to be found? Well, that's the Google image search. You just look it up, find out what that relationship is, and take it from there. Alrighty, so hopefully that's helpful, and I will talk to you later. Take it easy.